He is the world's most wanted man, held responsible for the worst terrorist atrocities ever committed, and the subject of the biggest manhunt in history. For a decade, Osama bin Laden has managed to evade the world's greatest superpower.
This is the most wanted man in human history. More intelligence services, more secret services are looking for this one man than have ever looked for a single man before, and we don't have a clue where he is.
His face is known around the world, but why has this distinctive, tall Arab man not been seen? Why were numerous opportunities to capture or kill him missed? Why did the last video show him with a new, darker beard? And why are there constant rumors about his death?
How does the most famous man in the world completely fall off the side of the earth?
Now, even some heads of state believe he could be dead.
I feel that there is a strong assumption that he is dead because of his health and because of the fact that nobody's heard of him.
We hear from people who've met bin Laden, from people who've been hunting him, and we examine forensically bin Laden's video messages to try to solve the mystery of whether he is dead or alive. This is the last person to intercept a message from Osama bin Laden. And what he knows holds a vital clue as to whether bin Laden is dead or alive. He goes by the name of Dalton Fury. For security reasons, we can't show his face. His unit is the highly secret Delta Force. After 9/11, he was in charge of 90 special forces as they closed in on bin Laden in Afghanistan.
I was given the honor of being the ground force commander. We were given the mission to kill or capture Osama bin Laden in the Tora Bora Mountains of Afghanistan.
I want justice. There's an old poster out west, as I recall, that said, "Wanted, dead or alive."
In November 2001, Osama bin Laden was seen for the last time in public in eastern Afghanistan in Jalalabad. Then he and around 1,000 al-Qaeda fighters retreated to just 10 miles from the Pakistan border, to his old mountain base at Tora Bora, where he'd fought the Soviets years before.
We weren't positive until we actually heard Osama bin Laden on the radio, a short-range, unencrypted radio that he was clearly using as he gave commands. It was obvious it was him. When you have the local mujahideen holding up the radio and having everybody gather around like a rock stars on television, when you have a CIA operative who studied his voice for the last 10 years and they all tell you it's him, it's him.
The Bush presidency had a bold new strategy. Afghan troops fronted the mission, backed by a small number of Allied special forces directing huge airstrikes. Afghanistan fell in just over 2 months. Now with bin Laden cornered, the US government insisted on sticking to the plan. According to the man on the ground, American and British taxpayers ended up footing the bill for the services of 2 Afghan warlords.
General Hazar Ali was paid $4 million United States dollars to rent his leadership and his men. Haji Zaman Ghamsharik, supported by the United Kingdom, was paid $2 million.
It was going to prove a very costly mistake. Only about 1/10 of the 2,000 Afghan troops promised ever materialized. Worse still, they went home every evening.
They were reluctant to go in the mountains. They were afraid of Al-Qaeda at night. We were in the middle of Ramadan, which is a perfect excuse to leave the battlefield at night.
This is the Pakistani border and multiple infiltration routes across the Pakistani border.
In Washington, Hank Crumpton, the CIA's head of operations in Afghanistan, had an urgent meeting with President Bush. He wanted US troops to help seal the border to prevent bin Laden escaping into Pakistan.
My men at Tora Bora communicated directly to me back at CIA headquarters and expressed very clearly that we needed to put U.S. troops on the ground.
Hank Crumpton showed the president on a map that there were scores of escape routes.
I thought it would be impossible for us to block all of them, and I maintained we needed to move very quickly and we needed the troops now. The president asked me, do we have sufficient troops there? And I said no.
There were plenty of troops nearby, but the order never came. And that's not the only strange decision the Special Forces faced.
We first requested to go in from the south side over the 14,000-foot peaks to get the drop on bin Laden and al-Qaeda from behind.
That was denied. Special Forces weren't allowed to fight face-to-face with al-Qaeda. They were denied mortar artillery and mines to block escape routes.
In Delta, it's usually very odd that operational requests like that are denied if they're available.
And then some troops, planes, and other assets were actually withdrawn from the country.
The psychological and the PSYOPs plan, this crazy idea that bin Laden would see that the Special Operations Task Force had left the area and it's okay to come out and play. Very naive. Those things collectively, I think, constrained us operationally to the point where we were almost destined to failure.
This top hill, very top up there, that's supposedly where bin Laden's hanging out.
This is video filmed by Special Forces at the time.
We've seen movement along this saddle right here.
Against the odds, the US and UK Special Forces penned in al-Qaeda, directing massive airstrikes, killing many al-Qaeda fighters. But just then, the Afghan warlords agreed a ceasefire, allowing bin Laden to move back and many of his fighters to escape. Bin Laden was heard for the last time on the radio, and the next day, he actually signed and dated his will.
On the 14th, we think we were roughly 800 meters from when he went into the cave, which we're pretty sure it was him along with his entourage and his personal security.
The Americans called in a huge air bombardment. He's not been seen verifiably since. The official account suggests that 2 days later he slipped away, across the border into Pakistan.
Clearly, there was more that we could have done. Sadly, with only a handful of American forces. We relied on some of our Afghan forces. Some of them, in retrospect, we know were influenced by al-Qaeda. Some were paid off, and bin Laden was allowed to escape.
So was it a strategic blunder by military commanders, or was there something more sinister? It turns out the CIA did check out the 2 Afghan warlords, and the man who ran the check said they couldn't be trusted.
A couple of gentlemen named Haji Zaman, and the other one was named Hazrat Ali. They had fought against the Soviets. One of them had fought with Osama bin Laden during the 80s, and both of them were related to an Afghan leader called Yunus Halas, who had always been very close to Osama bin Laden. So these Afghans were likely to be a day late and a dollar short.
If he thinks he can hide and run from the United States and our allies, he will be sorely mistaken. There's no question in my mind we'll have the resolve.
Tora Bora probably should be the font of all of these conspiracy theories. Because who would believe that both the President of the United States and his top generals would not use the military that Americans paid for to defend Americans? It's almost unbelievable, but that's what happened.